Moderator, which we so much need in this space. Not that all of you guys are going to just be selling things, but with that, I will give it over to Carree, and thanks a lot.
Hi, we're going to take a couple minutes, a very few couple minutes up front for everybody to intro themselves, and you will find no blatant selling on this panel. Otherwise, I will start hurting people. So I work for Kinetic Social. I used to run social for Mindshare. And Kinetic Social is basically smart data to inform cross-channel buying and strategy.
Hi, I'm Matt Conlan, Director of Client Services at tracx, and we're a social media management platform.
Hi, I'm Anthony Green. I'm VP Business Development at Optimal. We're a Facebook PMD. We help brands and agencies to advertise on social channels.
Hey, I'm Chris Knock, Vice President of Strategy at Ignition One. And I'm here to get you to buy the idea that social intelligence is important.
I was totally going to do the buy joke. My name is Beth McCabe. I'm a VP of Social Marketing and Technology at Digitas. We're actually also PMD. Yes. And we're an integrated digital agency.
Hi, hello. I'm Jeff Simones, President of M80, and we are the social marketing expertise inside the Group M holding company.
Okay, so I thought it would be a good thing to start off this by actually defining what we're talking about in terms of social intelligence. So I'm going to throw this over to Jeff, and we're just going to go from there. But I think starting from knowing what we're talking about first is a good idea.
Thanks, Carree. And you know, I would say that answer to this question can come in a variety of forms, depending on who's asking, why they're asking, and what they hope to accomplish via social intelligence. And I would say for the purposes of today, what we're talking about here is analyzing data from the social web, collecting oceans and oceans of data that is then analyzed, or so we say, looked at by analysts and scientists, along with account-level subject matter experts who are tasked with distilling all of this stuff down into valuable, meaningful, and of course, wait for it, actionable nuggets of information that really inform everyone who touches a brand's business. It doesn't really matter who you are or what you do. There is really valuable information that can be gleaned from social intelligence when executed well. I would say that's a very sort of general intro to hear what you folks have to say.
So, you know, we know that you ignore social voices at your own peril at this point, you know, in the industry. But I'm kind of wondering how it is that you go about making that first leap, that knowing what to choose, what to look at, and how to actually approach that when you're faced with a sea of, you know, traditional market research and pieces like that. So how do you even get started?
You know, first, I think it's to really understand what's the ultimate objective here. So, Beth, tell us about what that is.
The ultimate objective. I'm going to
Sounds
add
like a secret mission.
I know, right? I mean, I think your definition of social intelligence was great. I'm going to add the word insights. That's really what the ultimate objective is to find some insights out of this like vast sea of social data. And obviously, you have to start by listening. Everybody knows what that is. There's, you know, you listen and you find out, or you hear a ton of things. We actually use like 25 tools, I think, to listen. I will name them all right now. Just kidding. But you know, it's hard to find insights without sort of juxtaposing what you're hearing in social against what's going on in the real world. And I think that's a big part of it. That's a lot of what we do here at Digitas, not to sell, is really like going through all of this, you know, crazy plethora of information and then taking a look at what's going on in the world, what are sort of the inflection points that we can leverage to get our brand message across. And there's not always a point to leverage to get our brand message across. Sometimes you learn something and you can't use it.
So I have a challenge for all that. I see like a sea of Apple logos out here. A lot of people on laptops. Just go Google social intelligence. You won't find any social intelligence platforms. You won't find anything like that. Social intelligence is actually a psychological term. It means your ability to read people in a social situation and have a valuable interaction with them, essentially. To me, that's what social intelligence is trying to accomplish. It's who am I trying to talk to? So establish where is my audience, what do they think about me, and how can I use that information to influence them to do the things that I want them to do and feel the way that I want them to feel about me. So that's about it. So hopefully you guys have Google up on all the laptops up there so you could get like the full definition.
So you've pulled back a bunch of data. You have this handful of insights, and you have probably a whole other department that does traditional market research. How do you actually marry those 2 points together so that things don't sit in silos and that you can actually learn across?
Duct tape.
Okay, that works.
Actually, this is something that I constantly deal with on a regular basis is people coming to me and saying, I have all this different types of data, and I want to take the stuff I'm getting from tracx, and I don't even know what to do with it. So kind of like, why are you even seeing the social data? You need to define, why do I even want to start marrying those together? What do you hope to get out of it? It's kind of like the Jeopardy approach. Do you have a bunch of answers and you're looking for questions that you should be asking about your business? Or do you have a bunch of questions that you want to try to answer with that data? So is it a matter of taking the raw data through an API and maybe taking that social data and sticking it into a CRM tool or some type of internal database that you can start to layer that data on top of each other, look for that correlations between mentions within a certain network and sales? Is there anything there depending on what project? And that's a pretty important part of defining how or why you would do those integrations is coming up with that definition of why am I doing this? Well, is it down to a specific project, or am I doing it from like a brand health level? Am I trying to do a traditional brand health study by putting this data together? DSPs or SSPs, are you trying to take that data to enhance or even expand already existing data that you have and try to expand from it? So,
in all of your experience, how have you married those? What are some of the situations where you've married those together and found some really, good, actionable, another one of my favorite words, actionable points to actually go forward with your brand?
Well, I think right now we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. I think that's the big challenge, is trying to marry social data with traditional data sources and intelligence sources. The way we go about it right now with clients is that Facebook data informs a Facebook buy, a Twitter data informs a Twitter buy. We're in the process right now of trying to marry some of those channels together, but we haven't quite got there yet as a company. And I think I'm seeing a lot of confusion and noise in the marketplace. People feel like they need to be really meshing this social intelligence with traditional data sources, and I think to your point, it's not that easy to do right now. I think we're on the road to get there, but I think it's baby steps, and it's making sure that you're really understanding the Facebook ecosystem of your fans and your competitors' fans. What are the things that are relevant to them, and trying to harness that information for a media buy on Facebook, for a content strategy on Facebook. And similarly with Twitter now opening up their API, there's more analytics and data available for Twitter, using those insights to inform a Twitter buy. Other social channels will open up over time, but I think it's baby steps. It's getting those major channels right first, understanding the analytics and metrics that are relevant to you on those channels to inform content and media on those channels, and then maybe down the road we can get to a place where everything's kind of meshing nicely together.
And just make sure you're not forcing the insight. You can put stuff together, and then it might not be the right data to put together, and you're forcing that insight out of it because, well, I've gone through these steps of putting the data together through an API, and I got these great charts and graphs, and I think there should be an answer there, but maybe there's not.
I think you've got to start with the end in mind often. If you're running, Facebook's obviously the elephant. If you're running a DR campaign as opposed to a fan acquisition campaign, as opposed to just brand awareness, the metrics and intelligence you're going to need to inform that campaign is going to be different every time. So I think it's starting with the end in mind, understanding what is your objective, and then looking for the data that's going to help inform that.
As far as marrying social and traditional data, we're actually building a tool called SODA, Social Data Visualization. And we used it at South by Southwest, actually, to sort of tell the story of South by Southwest. And it really lets us sort of bring in the social data, the traditional data, and then visualize it and look at, try to find insights that way. And I think it's interesting, like the things that you learn when you really look at the social data next to the traditional data is that you don't necessarily learn the same thing from the two. The things that people are interested in and talk about and really catch on in sort of the social data space are not always reflected in the traditional data space in the way that you'd expect, and vice versa.
Can you give an example of that?
I should be able to. So for South by, for example, I have to think about this for a second.
I'll just say that I know that there are agencies trying to do this. So one of my clients who's here, Resolution Media from Omnicom, are looking at the moment to build a proprietary tool to start meshing some of this data together. So it's social data, search data, web analytics data. And I know that's still kind of a work in progress for them, but certainly there is a movement in the marketplace to try and get some sort of centralized dashboard where all this data can come together and you're trying to get that, dare I say it, 360-degree view of the customer.
I think one of the easiest things to glean from social data is insights about content strategy. What is it that consumers are looking for from you as a brand, and what kind of stories do you need to tell? And that one's kind of the no-brainer of the bunch. But what are some of the other things that that are uniquely place to be leveraged from social data beyond, say, a content strategy or a brand voice or something like that? Because, that's easy. That's the easy one.
Well, it comes down to, first of all, you need to know where your audience is. And if you know where your audience is and you know what they're talking about, then you can engage them and hopefully get them to do the things that you want them to do. So knowing that people are congregating on Facebook mostly for your brand as opposed to Twitter, and they like to talk about certain things, the idea would be throw all the fuel on that fire, get them talking, and then try and attempt to get them to take action off of that. So basically building up your audience, and then the fuel on the fire is the paid media side. I have identified a conversation about something that I think will drive some type of action, be it a conversion, be it sharing, whatever it is, and you throw more media on that, maybe a sponsored newsfeed ad. And then once you have that done, then you can start targeting those people based on their interests, especially if you get them off of Facebook, if you get them off of Twitter. That's really one of the biggest challenges right now with all of this tracking is you can't cookie people on these sites at all. If I have a brand and I'm advertising on Facebook or I'm engaging with people on Facebook, it's difficult for me to do anything other than maybe like a view-through tracking. Twitter, there's no tracking. Pinterest, there's no tracking. So tracking the effect of your conversation is very difficult unless you get them to come to your site and your owned properties where you can start dropping pixels on them.
That brings up an interesting point. One of Facebook's newest initiatives is really to be more DR focused. And you bring up a really good point about how do you actually follow that to the conversion end. So do you have any, and this is something that Facebook's pushing really, really hard right now, but I don't think we really have all the tools yet necessary to be able to follow this all the way to the end of the funnel or the, whatever we're calling the funnel these days. So do you have any thoughts on how that's going to flesh out?
So, it's not a lack of tools, it's a lack of functionality from the social platforms. So if Facebook would allow me to pixel people based on when they like, share, or comment, any type of PTAT activity, same thing with Twitter, if somebody retweets something, then I can start developing a web of activity that I can track and figure out, okay, I did this from a social activity perspective and all my fans did this, and then this was the net effect. So that's what we're missing. But even when you're missing that, what we can see working is having a better strategy about the types of content that you're getting out there. So if I have content that is engaging, meaning I want people to talk about it, I want people to engage and read it and share it and grow the audience, that's one type of content. Then you can have content that's a call to action, like come and test drive our car, come in, share this coupon and, some type of, like Wildfire app where you get people to do some type of group buying and sharing activity. But again, all of it, because we don't have that ability to track people on top of the platforms, I really believe that you need to post content that brings them back to your site so that you can pixel them. And then the only real good DR stuff that Facebook has right now is FBX, which is the ability to then pixel that person based on interests, build different cookie pools, and target them based on their interests.
I'd argue that Facebook have made a pretty significant play recently to try and appease DR marketers. It really was not a good channel for bottom of the funnel for some time, but FBX in the newsfeed, which opened up a couple of weeks ago, is pretty huge. Conversion pixels, dark posts, which are now called unpublished posts on Facebook, are all things that have been built fairly recently to try and, again, appease DR marketers who just weren't seeing any results from the Facebook channel. So I think Facebook are making a big play in that area. They realised they were leaving a ton of money on the table and are doing their best to try and to cater for that now.
Yeah, I mean, the other challenge is the two big players when it comes to social are Facebook, but then the conversions are happening on Google in a lot of cases. So another thing that you might need is not only a good platform for advertising on Facebook, but you also need to connect those pipes to your search platforms and make sure those things are talking in a lot of cases. And FBX, you know, it's not social, it's essentially display. You bring that in. So now you have 3 types of advertising talking. You develop an attribution layer across those things, even though somebody crapped on attribution earlier. Completely disagree. But you basically need to use that to track where, you know, the activity that you want is coming from and to, again, throw more fuel on that fire.
I know this is kind of your sweet spot in this whole mix. Do you have anything that you can share that shows how you've connected all those?
I think we have a few case studies on our site. Problem I have is I work with customers that we can talk about and can't talk about, and I'm horrible at keeping track of them. But yes, we do. I do know that we have a case study that's coming out of connecting search and FBX, but it's not official yet. I can just say it's a major subscription-based brand for consumer entertainment. You know.
Okay.
If I said it, you'd be like,
probably,
oh, okay, where do I go download that?
Probably do the math on that. Yeah. I'm kind of wondering, you know, with social intelligence and with all this data that we bring back, are there any commonalities across verticals that you see? And are there any verticals out there that are better placed to leverage social intelligence than others? Or is it just kind of, hey, it works for everyone, you just have to find the right spot?
Well, I think in general, if you back up and you look at, philosophically, we look at social for 2 primary reasons. One, the promise of social allows us to enable the brand-to-consumer relationship. And I think the biggest value of social intelligence is to help us figure out how well of a job we're doing there. And I think the second part of that relationship is the value of effective word-of-mouth communication. Again, I think that was everyone's sort of promise was that, you know, no one believes in a TV spot, no one believes in the big brand message, but someone believes the trusted voice of a friend or an influential voice that, you know, has some sort of clout in the conversation. But using social intelligence to understand how I've connected with these people who have raised their hands and said, I want to follow you on these platforms. What motivates them to connect? What motivates them to talk back, share, and engage? And then ultimately, what motivates them to buy products? And I think that if we distill that down on a platform-by-platform basis, we realize that this type of content, to your point in terms of content optimization as a byproduct of strong social intelligence, that's where the rubber meets the road for us, who are responsible for driving value as a marketer, using the voices of our audiences as part of that mechanism. And the optimization of content and then distributing the messages from there. Each platform has their own sort of tricks and tips, if you will, for where to ignite the conversation with some paid dollars, but also leverage the earned value of putting the right content in the right conversation at the right time.
In terms of vertical markets, I mean, I can't speak to every vertical market. I haven't worked with every vertical market, but specifically for us, financial services is one that we've seen pretty tremendous results with clients like Liberty Mutual and E-Trade, who have been harnessing really all Facebook ad types to drive everything from fan acquisition through to direct response, people taking out insurance quotes and accounts on E-Trade. Definitely think e-commerce, anyone in that kind of space, so clients we have like Gilt Group, Facebook's just built for those guys. Even through to entertainment brands now are seeing some success, so I think those 3 particularly for us, we're seeing a lot of activity and a lot of success on Facebook, and then starting to dip their toe more into Twitter.
The other thing that I've seen is those groups that you're talking about, in a lot of cases, all it is low consideration cycle. And they get to throw more money on it, like a guilt group, like, okay, I'm in the market for insurance, I engage with the brand, and then I buy. You know what I mean? That's what I think is going on right now with social is we can't connect the dots all the way back to the action that we want them to take in all cases. In the cases where it's easy, I posted a social ad or I posted some type of social post and somebody took action directly off of it that I wanted, and I can do the quick math and say every time I spend this amount of money on it and I get these number of actions, that's where people say social's working for me. When it's a long consideration cycle, when it's top of the funnel activity, unless you have a strong marketing department that understands the values of those activities, that's where you get people that are saying social doesn't work for me, I don't believe in it.
That actually brings up a good point. Another one of my favorite words to hate is ROI when it comes to social, but you bring up some, an interesting point. So what are those numbers and those metrics on the social side of the house that you could go back to, say, a brand and say, okay, I know we need to convince you that this is working. Here's number A, B, C, and D, and these are the ones you should be looking at from a social perspective. So how can we help brands understand that it is a long tail and it's not necessarily going to always give you a result the first day out?
Well, first I would say it can be a long tail. There's plenty of companies out there that are executing. I post something on Facebook, I get money out of it. But I mean, it's.
I'm making broad sweeping.
Yeah, of course. So you basically work your way back from the money. If it's a sale that happens on my site and I can track that off of this, all right, I track that and I create a money in, money out model of it. But if I don't have that, then you go up to, every time we raise this level of activity and we track it across all of our social intelligence platforms, then that's a good thing, and the right type of activity happens, conversations go up, more sales roll in. So you just it's basically finding metrics like sales, different engagement scores, like on Facebook, it would be any of the PTAT stuff that you see. Sentiment analysis is also something that's still kind of in its wonky phase, but we're trying to figure out. That's one that I'm very, very interested in, is somebody that could really dial in sentiment analysis.
And that's historically been one of the most difficult because of the algorithms that it takes to actually run those. That one takes a whole lot of time, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of reading.
But I mean, it's basically decide on what action you want your audience to take. Get the C-suite to agree on that, and then say, all right, this is how we're going to track it. You have to have a tracking capability to track what you're trying to get them to do. And then you basically back out and say, this is how much money we want to spend in order for this activity to occur.
Yeah, I think a couple other people have said it's easier when you know what you're trying to do to actually accomplish something here. So I think starting out with a goal and saying, what I really want is, to not necessarily to raise sentiment, but more engagement, or I want more click-throughs and I want this kind of conversion. And if you start out with that and then you back into your tactics, it's a lot easier to prove your ROI and what you've been doing, because you've basically started out with an agenda of like, hey, this is the action that I'm asking for. And then there's not really much ambiguity when you get there.
Yeah, you only hit what you aim at.
Yep.
Defining all the different actions that can happen in that project, and it's going to be different for every project. Long tail or 2 pieces of action can actually get you that number, but defining every action that could happen, what is a common, how does that fit into that algorithm? And as you said, start with the money and maybe try to meet in the middle of, okay, here's all the different metadata that I have, and how can I develop that algorithm to give me that ROI?
I think an important step that we're all on the hook for these days is ensuring that there's alignment between social marketing success, checking the KPI box that aligns with business objectives. So if we know we want test drives, if we drive X number of test drives to the site, our clients have computed an ROI outcome of every 1,000 people that test drive, we sell X cars. So that's how we're perhaps able to back into that.
And I'll just say broadly, the 3 stats that I would care about if I was starting off in this world, and we're talking a lot about Facebook here, obviously, is first of all fan number. Second is PTAT, or engagement, is critical. And also a calculation that we've derived at Optimal called the global CPC, which is essentially the value of the fan based on where they're located in the world. There's been a lot in the first iteration of all this fan acquisition. A number of brands acquired fans for the cheapest possible price, and now have fans in places that may be worth literally zero to them. And so we look with our clients and work with our clients to understand where are their fans located, what's the value of a fan in, say, the US versus Indonesia, and then that has to come into play as well. It's not just raw number of fans, but it's about having the right fans in the right places. And once you start with those metrics and start to engage with those fans, you can start to look for other avenues to drive revenue from them.
And one last thing I would add to the whole metrics conversation is, as a vendor or an agency of some sort, challenge the brand on the metrics they're asking for, and vice versa. That's if you start off with the wrong thing to aim at, then you're never going to hit what you're looking for. So I just don't. I mean, that's how we got into the whole like I want fans thing, and it was like okay, and like a whole cottage industry grew for like 3 years growing fans, and we didn't want that.
And now Facebook doesn't want that either.
No, now a lot of people are pissed off too because they've gone and acquired all these fans, and then Facebook have changed the rules. You now need to spend money on paid media to actually reach your own fans, which is understandable based on a public company and stock price, but kind of annoyed a lot of the brands themselves.
It's almost like we need defriending campaigns now. It's like, I know I have, like, in order to reach 100% of my audience, it costs X amount of dollars, but I know, like, 40% of them are complete bullshit based on how my fan acquisition strategies from 3 years ago.
Yeah, because I filled the bucket with Malaysian likes. And
Yeah,
now-
exactly.
Wouldn't it be great if you
we
kick
found with
people out?
a major rental car company, we found that they over-index for fans under 21. And if anyone knows, it's really hard to rent a car under 21. But also they over-indexed in North Africa and Eastern Europe where they had no branches whatsoever. And that's a pretty extreme case. But this was the mistake a lot of brands made early on when an agency or someone came to them and said, look, we can get you fans for 10 cents, 20 cents. That sounded great. They probably did get them for that price, but now they've got a fan base. It's like having an email marketing list of email addresses that are completely useless and going to bounce back. So we've even had clients come to us asking us to work with Facebook to basically get rid of their fans and start again or try and purge some. Facebook aren't really into that. I think they've made some exceptions in some certain cases, again, based on the amount of media they're spending with them.
But this is a real conundrum. With engagement at a premium, and for clients who have invested heavily to aggregate an audience that really doesn't care, and if we're held to an engagement number, we need to do some house cleaning. Get rid of some folks who don't really care and negatively impact our numbers because they're never going to respond to what we're saying.
Yeah, and they automatically draw the metrics down. I mean, you look at someone like a Coke who has a gajillion fans, well, their engagement rates are going to be significantly lower than, a mom and pop who has a really loyal following, just because the numbers can't ever, equalize.
Well, I think the final comment about that is, it kind of gives me sort of a reason to give a thumbs up or kudos to, I think it was J.C. Penney who just said, we're going to hit reset, and we're going to eviscerate our audience and start over because this isn't working for us. It takes a lot of balls to do that after you've invested a lot of time and money.
Actually, Motorola just did that as well.
Nice work.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you just got to know that you made some mistakes and it's time to roll back from that at this point, And maybe that, we're talking about social intelligence tools. Maybe that is one metric or one insight that we need right now is how crappy are my fans?
Totally.
It's
Yeah, the crapometer.
remembering what you did, just before a certain project. If you were acquiring a mass amount of fans and you figured the life cycle would probably be a couple of weeks, and then you see your fan count drop or your engagement level drops, well, you kind of should have expected that to happen. That's, you handed out a coupon or, like my page to do this. Those types of fans don't stick around. They're valid customers. They're not going to be there forever.
One of the things that amazes me to this day is how many brands haven't embraced social intelligence and listening and understanding what the consumer voice is. For anyone who is out there at an agency or at a brand who hasn't kind of jumped into this yet, what would how do you break that down into manageable chunks so that you can start to learn from it and start to, be more effective?
Fear. Scare them.
Yeah, it reminds me of a demotivator poster I saw, which was if we stop answering the phones, the customers will stop calling. Which is this idea that social is a channel that people are using to communicate to you and about you. It's like a phone line. It's like a website. And these brands saying, we don't believe in social, or we're not going to engage in social, or they're dragging their feet to social. It's essentially like not installing a phone line for your business at this point.
Yeah, the early days I used to hear, what networks do we want to look on? I want to look on everything except for Twitter. Well, why not Twitter? Well, because I don't have anyone to dedicate to that. And I'm terrified that if I look there, there is a lot of people complaining about my brand. Well, exactly. Well, then you should be looking there. And
The old head in the sand strategy.
It's like that big rock in your garden you're afraid to lift because you know what might be underneath it.
Just anecdotally, a few years back, I was with one of Matt's former comrades, and we were presenting to a client, and they were kind of on the fence. They had heard that this was something they wanted to get into, and they wanted to do some monitoring and just understand what's being said and what they can do about it. And I pulled up a YouTube video that was 2 days old that showed bed bugs crawling on the wall and on the sheets of a property of this certain brand. And before the video was 10 seconds in, she was IMing, emailing, and calling someone to get approval to spend money. So, I wasn't joking when I suggested fear. If you show someone that's really sensitive to dialogue about their business, let alone something horribly damaging about the products or services they're offering, that'll get someone to sort of lean in and sign on, if you will.
That's funny because I'm usually kind of the devil's advocate in the bunch, and I take the polar opposite of that, and I always try to find what are those golden nuggets that brands don't actually realize that people are doing their marketing for them. And I hate to, again, another in my list of hates, the aha moments. I think the fear does work, but I also think the positive part can be just so illuminating to so many.
Well, Carree, as you know, that's the cornerstone of what we do. The positive aspect of it all is the power of word of mouth. And if you can inspire your audience to advocate on your behalf, talk favorably, and defend your brand when others are detracting, that's the byproduct of strong relationship management and social media.
Yeah, I think earned media is great, and it's obviously the goal for many of us, but we've all got to be very aware, particularly on Facebook, and Twitter will follow, and Pinterest, whoever else comes next, that you really do have to spend some significant dollars these days to get your own content out to fans and friends of fans and so on, and then the earned media can take over. Facebook had a competition a couple of months ago for PMDs to develop new technologies to drive more newsfeed ads, so page post ads, sponsored stories and so on, of course, because the newsfeed is essentially mobile and they want to be a mobile company. And it was so that brands could more easily automate the ability to post content and then know what content to put paid media behind in a very quick time. So we did a study recently, 70% of engagement with a page post or with content on your page happens within the first 3 hours, and 40% happens within the first 30 to 40 minutes. And so you need either a bunch of human beings there who are looking at this stuff all the time, which is not really scalable, or you need to understand the minimum effective spend that you need to put behind your content to amplify that to a point where the earned media takes over. Because earned media is great, and that's what social's about, but Facebook have stacked the odds against you now that you have to put paid media behind these things. And again, the other social networks will be the same because they need to be generating more revenue. So it's really important to remember that earned is the goal in many cases, but you do need to put money behind it to get to that point.
I'm still stuck on this whole fear thing you did. I love it. And it makes me wonder if, should brands be listening to their competitors, and when something bad happens, throw more money on that? What would the value of that be? If that hotel chain's competitor knew about the bed bug thing and had some guerrilla marketing team just spending $100,000 a month or $1 million a month.
I was pitching a client last week who believes the competitors are doing that very thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's just I started a dozen years ago in old school SEO and affiliate marketing. So that's the underbelly of the internet, and my mind always jumps to that sort of stuff in some cases. Who's doing this to me? Who's doing this to my brand?
Yeah,
the answer is they all are.
Yeah.
Because if you don't look at what your competitors are doing and potentially where your competitors are stumbling, you're missing out on an opportunity to unfortunately capitalize on someone else's misfortune. But let's face it, it works. Unilever's actually really, really good at making sure they know what's happening across, and they will react very, very quickly like that. We should open this up to questions now. I would like to at least, try to answer some stuff out on the floor.
We have a question right there.
Hi, I'm Carrie Ann. I have a question. Before you begin any social strategy, do you look at the WOM across the internet, or the searches being done, or the online reviews before you even begin, or do you just focus on the social networks?
Well, D, all of the above. I think that while the major platforms are certainly capturing the most attention and most engagement, we can't ignore the broader web. And I actually try to overemphasize the smaller pockets of conversation because they're oftentimes more relevant. And if we can benefit from sort of a clickstream analysis from the shopping cart back, say, 60 or 90 days to see what interactions with what content and where drove the actual decision to purchase something, you start to see how the influence of small-ish platforms like endemic blogs relative to the purchase process are actually a big motivator for the decision. But I think that what we all are tasked with is understanding when we pick a provider or a partner to analyze the broader social web, we've got to understand what are we actually buying, because the business that most of the providers are in aren't able to sustain crunching all of that sort of social web. It's just not. So we're basically buying segments of the overall conversation and hoping we're capturing relevance for our clients and those brand messages. And that's just a byproduct for the business model of software as service. So if we understand what we don't know as best we can, and then apply what we do know to the process, I think that's how we would approach it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that's hard to scale unless you're a big brand with lots of resources and money. I think if you're a smaller company, being able to go out there and find those pockets on blog posts and these kind of places is costly and difficult. I was at a company briefly that were trying to do that, and it was tough in many regards. So I think starting with, for instance, if you're looking at a Facebook campaign or a Twitter campaign, looking at getting the best metrics you can from Facebook to inform Facebook and Twitter to inform Twitter is a good place to start and much more scalable. But certainly if you're a bigger brand, you've got an agency that can do this work for you, have the budget to do it, then being able to explore the broader social web is also relevant.
I want to throw something out there really quick. We know that the youngest demographic out there, the really young millennials, are walking away from Facebook in exponential rates. I have a 14-year-old and I watch her habits and I find it horrifying. But so if you're looking at one of the largest segments of the pool, what happens if you can't rely on Facebook data to help you with that demographic if you know that they're not there? That doesn't leave you big audiences to work with. It leaves you more in the niche section, like in Tumblr, in Snapchat, in every other horrible tiny place where the children play. How do you approach that?
Well, you look for the next biggest audiences. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, it's the kind of the metrics have been established now by two acquisitions. Instagram, 100 million users, bought for $1 billion. Tumblr, 100 million users, about to get bought for $1 billion. So that would be that next layer down, is which ones are growing and how fast are they growing and when are they going to get to 100 million. Pinterest isn't there yet, but very targeted, and we know the targeting on that one. So I think that's what you look for, is what's next, and you can't have tunnel vision, to your point, on Facebook, on Twitter, and all these different platforms. You need to think about, where is my audience starting to congregate and where is it growing?
We also need them to open up their data and their APIs. So as soon as they do that, it puts us in a better position
that would be nice.
That always helps.
It's kind of funny thinking about how our friends on the traditional side are no longer able to buy network 30s and 60s to reach 18 to 34s. We have, they've been scattered through all the other sort of channels, and similar with Facebook. We're no longer reaching teens on Facebook.
Let's try to get another question in.
Right here. Hold on. So you can state your name and title again. That'd be great.
James Lee, I work for an investment firm, COSA. I asked the last panel same question, and I asked the same again regarding measurement attribution. A lot of people tend to think the view of the attribution will be going from last click to multi-touch attribution. Do you feel the same way? And who's in best position to get there? And also offline attribution, really important to a lot of social media sites not able to doing it. Who's doing it? Facebook's boasting about custom audiences, data logic, all that stuff. Curious about your view. Thanks.
The last panel killed attribution, by the way. It's dead. So I just thought I would segue for
Which-
those of you who
That's
missed
good to
it.
know.
Which is ridiculous. So attribution is huge. And I think people want to kill it because it's getting more and more complicated. And it simplifies your life to say it's not necessary. But we, for example, and this is the one time I'll mention what we do, is we do a lot of attribution across search, display, and social. And when we even just put two together, we're seeing informed lifts in performance because you know how one is influencing the other. And we're seeing 20% lifts, 30% lifts. So just look for it to continue to grow. Anthony just mentioned, we need access to their APIs. We need more data. I think that's what's going to come from a lot of social down the road is more and more data is going to be sold. More and more data is going to be integrated. You're going to see, Instagram, Tumblr, one of the first things that they're going to have to do to sell or to make money for $1 billion is they're going to do advertising and data. So and you need those things to connect the dots. And the more informed you are, the better your buys can be. And you're never going to get to this perfect world where you know every impression, click, and everything has happened. And quite frankly, to your question about this last click model, I've been working with advertisers for 6 years that have been doing multi-touch attribution. It's been growing and growing and growing. And if you're still doing last click attribution, you are light years behind what's going on right now. You just got to get out of that mentality.
Okay, thank you for that fear. Fear. Does anyone have anything else for that?
All I'd say is I think it's really freaking hard, attribution. And it's funny, I never worked in TV or radio or anything. It was a little bit before me. But I wonder whether there was so much emphasis and pressure on those channels back in the day to measure the effect of a TV ad on someone going into a store. It was literally probably impossible to do. And now that we've got all this technology behind us, it's only getting more convoluted, but there also should be an easy way to get there, but there's simply not right now. So I think there's a lot more pressure on digital marketers to be able to measure attribution, but I don't think anyone's quite there yet.
Well, and the last thing is when it comes to the measurement, one of the challenges that people are having with attribution now is they can measure, but then taking action off of that measurement is very difficult because you're taking a measurement across 3-4 media channels, and each one is managed by a different team with different tools, and having them take action in chorus is very difficult for them right now. That's our big challenge as marketers when it comes to attribution and multi-channel marketing right now.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you guys. Great panel. Please give them a round of applause.